From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, why more Louisiana farmers may be turning to cotton.
So that's going to create some hardship, especially if we have a good cotton crop.
We're learning more about the chemical found at one New Mexico dairy that's forced a producer to cull thousands of cows. And another round of trade talks wrap up with China. Are we any closer to a deal?
We're having very good talks. There's a chance that something very exciting could happen.
AgDay, presented by the all-new Chevy Silverado, the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. There are more hopeful signs a deal can be reached with China, and big dollar amounts are being talked about. CNBC saying sources tell them China has committed to buying up to $1.2 trillion of U.S. goods. That news coming after the end of another round of trade talks last week. But even bigger, U.S. Secretary Sonny Perdue saying Chinese officials have committed to buying an additional 10 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans. That announcement coming as the two sides met in the Oval Office with President Trump. Our Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer saying the two sides agreed to extend the talks over the weekend. Now the president calling the extension good news, saying it means a deal is more likely. The two sides have reportedly reached agreement on some common ground on currency. But U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lionheiser says there are still some great hurdles left, but was also upbeat, saying progress has been made on very important issues. Negotiators are trying to beat that March 1st deadline. That's when tariffs are set to increase on billions of dollars in Chinese goods. President Trump has said he may extend the deadline if things are going well.
We have a one-time shot at making a great deal for both countries. And so we are going to give it. So it depends on where we are. If we're doing well, Jeff, if we're doing very well on the negotiation, I could see extending that. And I don't think it would have to be a long-term extension, because I would imagine that if it took, Steve, another month or so or less.
John, I think our expectation is to conclude this quickly, and if we get to the point over the next few days of making progress, recommending a meeting for you and President Xi in March.
So dependent on how they do over the next few days, I would certainly consider that.
Washington insiders also saying President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping will meet sometime during the week of March 24th at Mar-a-Lago to continue to try to work out a deal. USDA also releasing an update on the market facilitation program. It says the agency has paid out $7.7 billion so far to help mitigate the impacts of the trade dispute with China. A big batch of new export numbers from USDA came out on Friday, and they show countries are coming to the market to buy U.S. ag, but exports to China are still down. This period, running from January 4th through February 14th, corn had net sales of more than 6 million metric tons. Top buyers were Mexico, Japan, and Colombia. That's 2% ahead of last year's sales at this time. Wheat had sales of more than 3 million metric tons. The biggest buyers were Nigeria and unknown destinations. Soybeans, it had sales of more than 6.5 million metric tons. The biggest buyer was China with 3.9 million metric tons, and Egypt and Japan. But sales of soybeans are still down 17% when compared to a year ago. USDA releasing its January cattle on feed report late Friday. It says the number of cattle and calves on feed in the nation's largest feedlots were up 2% compared to a year ago. Economists estimating there were 11.7 million head, including 4.4 million head of heifers, which was 6% higher than a year ago. Now, placements, they totaled 1.77 million, down 2% year over year. Marketings were also lower, down 1% at 1.74. We continue to keep you updated on this. A New Mexico dairy farm forced to euthanize 4,000 cows after several wells became contaminated with PFAS, the chemicals entering the groundwater at a nearby Air Force base in Clovis, New Mexico. The dairy farm belongs to Art Scott. He says he's being forced to sell his dairy because of the problem. The biggest question, are PFAS dangerous? Well, our partners over at Farm Journal's Milk reporting that the CDC says there is evidence exposure can potentially lead to health issues, but can it be found in milk? The simple answer is yes, if a cow consumes high levels of the chemicals, but one study says the biological process of producing milk can actually reduce quantities of PFAS in milk. The National Milk Producers Federation says any instance of PFAS in milk would be extremely isolated. African swine fever continues to spread, including new reports last week in both China and Vietnam. Now, China remains the hardest hit, and fresh cases continue to roll out. Since reporting its first case back in August of last year, commodity research firm AgResource says the disease may be affecting somewhere between 10 and 16% of China's hog population.
Our best guess at AgResources may be infecting 70 million hogs today, a significant amount, but it's still spreading and spreading rapidly. And this is our problem in the concentration that China has in facilities and what it will mean to their meat demand going forward. Our view at AgResources today, because of the additional slaughter and the consumers backing away from the product, that it's depressing the Chinese pork markets. That may change by summer, by June or somewhere in that time frame, in which we may find the Chinese very aggressive in terms of importing meat.
Bossy says that could lead to higher overall meat prices here at home by mid-year. The weather conditions in some portions of Texas are favorable right now for planting, as meteorologist Mike Hoffman shows us in today's Crop Comments.
That's right, Clinton. We're getting more pictures from Texas of the planting going on. Alan Meissner of Bartlett sharing this photo on Twitter. Bartlett is north of Austin. Alan said he waited for a little sunshine and then finally got his first taste of Plant 19 last week. He said it was a little bit wet, but said he had to start somewhere. Now taking a look at the drought monitor, you can see there really aren't very many issues with drought. There are a few drier areas starting to show up in Texas. It really is the moisture that's the problem in places farther east. We'll show you that coming up and have your forecast, but first here are some hometown temps.
Introducing Farm Journal TV, on demand 24/7. AgDay, Machinery Pete TV. U.S. Farm Report on your phone and tablet. Download the Farm Journal TV mobile app today.
Louisiana cotton farmers are expected to have a much larger crop this year, mostly at the expense of soybean and possibly corn acres. LSU Ag Center correspondent Craig Gautreaux looks into the reason why.
With soybean prices low and Louisiana farmers still stinging from a poor harvest, the state is expected to see a major bump in cotton acres. The U.S. Department of Agriculture forecast an increase of more than 22% because of higher cotton prices and less risk than soybeans.
Cotton prices are, at one time were around 80 cents not too long ago, and that created some optimism, if you were able to lock in at that price.
That price has come down some, but what growers haven't forgotten is the poor year for many soybean farmers. Rains came at harvest time and didn't let up, leaving many fields abandoned across the state. Coupled with the low price, it has caused many farmers to turn to cotton.
With soybean prices that are low, which I never thought we couldn't make money at $8 soybeans, but we decided to increase our acres on it.
A potential problem for growers, especially if cotton yields are good, is having enough ginning capacity. In 2000, there were more than 50 gins operating. Today, there are fewer than 20.
That was a problem just this past year when we had, a little less than, 200,000 acres. The gins are not, willing to take on more acres, so that's going to create some, hardship, especially if we have a good cotton crop.
Because cotton acreage has gotten so low, many producers sold their pickers. Those farmers will have to make the decision to reinvest in a picker or hire someone to harvest their crop.
It's a big investment in owning a cotton picker, plus the maintenance and upkeep. If you have 100 acres or so, it's like really the picker does not justify, purchasing for that little bit.
If field conditions do not dry up anytime soon, some corn acres may be turned into cotton as the optimum date for corn planting passes. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
All right, thanks, Craig. The USDA predicts Louisiana producers will plant approximately 240,000 acres of cotton. That's an increase of about 45,000 acres. Now, ethanol is a major part of corn demand. Up next, a spot check on the industry and potential impacts for farmers. And later, a viral video that will give you all the fields in the country.
AgDay, brought to you by the Liberty Lake Weed Management System. Liberty Lake by BASF. We create chemistry.
And agribusiness markets ending the week in turbulence, driven by conflicting reports about a trade agreement between the U.S. and China. Let's get details from the heart of the action, floor of the CME in Chicago.
Today's soybeans were mixed to even a little bit firm. The trade deal ahead is really the big question right now. China is proposing that they could buy an additional $30 billion of U.S. Ag products, so certainly corn, wheat, and soybeans all together. That still remains to be seen, but we're still waiting to see if the trade deal is actually going to materialize. Remember, March 1st was the deadline, so we're 1 week from away from that deadline, so things look like that they could be picking up. Wheat is the one that's a little bit of the, has a little bit of a wild hair here. It did firm up, but the sell-off of the last couple of days really stopped somewhat. So the bloodletting is over, but the market has not really rebounded as much as we can. One thing to watch, though, is the Minneapolis wheat is up 13 cents. So that is, that could be a little bit of a tell for the market for next week. That's all from the floor at the CME Group. Here in Chicago, I'm Virginia McGathy.
A big component of prices is demand, and for corn, that means having a healthy ethanol market. Tyne Morgan joins us from the road with today's analysis and a look at the current situation for the ethanol industry.
Here now with Joe Vaklovic of Standard Grain. Joe, when we look at ethanol and we look at USDA's latest report and looking at ethanol usage, they trimmed ethanol usage, but not by a lot. However, when I'm out in farm country and I'm talking to some of these ethanol plants and others, it sounds like demand may be waning a little bit more than what USDA said.
Yeah, ethanol has some problems right now. Production margins across essentially the entire Corn Belt have been negative for a couple months now at least, and longer than that in other places. So we've seen production decline a little bit. We've seen the demand for corn via the ethanol industry decline a little bit, and USDA did make a reduction. What we have seen, though, is we've seen ethanol prices rally back. We posted our highest trade, I think, since August in spot month ethanol futures just recently. We've rallied from, I think we bottomed around $1.19 a gallon up to about $1.34 a gallon in nearby futures. So I'm hoping that this is kind of a blip on the radar and that these processors can return to profitability. That would be the best thing.
Yeah, and there was so much focus last year on E15 year round. However, really some challenges right now in getting that approved even for this coming summer driving season. So what else, where else could we see that ethanol demand maybe come from to boost the demand picture overall?
Well, I think overall if the economy's good, that helps. If you get a strong summer driving season, if you want to call it that, I mean, if you see the economy good, people taking more trips, people doing more traveling, that's good. So I don't know, the future of ethanol short term I think is okay. I think this could be just a blip on the radar. The long-term future, as I've talked with you about before, with the onset of electric vehicles and all the money that's being poured into that technology, that's probably a different conversation. Longer term, I'm just hoping we get energy prices up a little bit, ethanol prices up a little bit, return to profitability, and get that ethanol grind back up.
That's long term, but short term, do you think we could build up some more demand?
Yeah, I think so, and it would really just be demand for corn is what would help the corn grower here. We need increased demand for corn via the ethanol producer, and the way you get that is by improved margins.
All right, Joe Vaklovic, thanks so much. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll have much more right here on Ag Day.
For more information about Standard Grain and its services, call Joe at 312-462-4438. Ag Day, brought to you by Precision Planting, provider of practical and effective precision ag technologies to help make farmers smarter every season. Learn more at precisionplanting.com.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Mike, snow fell in some pretty interesting places last week, including Las Vegas and Tucson. Take a look at these pictures from Sabino Canyon, that's near Tucson, the park, receiving 4 to 5 inches of snow late last week. Visibilities dropped to just a mile. Just beautiful pictures there, Mike, but it doesn't happen very often in the desert.
No, and we've seen snow like in the Pacific Northwest all the way to the shore. So it's been an unusual winter in a lot of parts of the country. Now, look at the moisture over the past week. That's been a little bit on the wet side, especially when you look at the Tennessee Valley, parts of the lower Mississippi Valley. There have been those wet areas out west as well, and as Clinton just showed you, some of those areas are melted snow. That's what this map shows, is the estimated rain and melted snow a week ago Saturday through this past Friday, estimated from radar. So look at that area from northern Mississippi, northwestern Alabama into south central Tennessee, basically in an area in between Nashville, Huntsville, Jackson, Little Rock, and Memphis. Some areas getting 8 inches or more of moisture in 1 week. So in the middle of winter, those are kind of amazing numbers, because you're not talking massive thunderstorms or lines of thunderstorms rolling through. You're talking widespread areas of rain in a lot of cases. Obviously, there were thunderstorms thrown in there as well. But it really is a jet stream we have to look at this week. There is very cold air in central Canada as we start the week. And as we head through the week, then you can see we go zonal for a while, so it's still very cold in the Great Lakes in the northeast for this little batch of cold air that's come in. And then you can see this cutoff off the Pacific Northwest coast. That folds into the whole trough, and that brings a shot of Arctic air right on down into the south central plains and into parts of the southeast. How far south is still a question, because you can see by the following Monday it's already back to zonal through the southern tier of states. But this is a huge area of cold air, so I think the northern half of the country definitely going to be cold. And in fact, I'm going to go below normal all the way down into Texas and Louisiana. Now, you're normally pretty warm for this time of the year, so just a little bit below normal isn't going to be terrible, but it's going to be way below normal in the northern tier of states. South Florida, southwest, above normal. Precipitation this week, northern Great Lakes, the southwest below normal, southeast and northwest above normal. Most areas pretty close to normal. 30-day outlook for temperatures, kind of more of the same from Texas northward. Great Lakes, northwest, all included below normal, southeast, mid-Atlantic above normal. And then precipitation over the next 30 days, I'm kind of thinking the eastern third of the country above normal, as well as the southern Mississippi Valley, then the northern and central plains and the Pacific Northwest below. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Boise, Idaho. First of all, cloudy, rain and drizzle possible, high of just 47. St. Louis, Missouri, lots of sunshine, but still rather cold, high of just 46. And Newark, New Jersey, partly sunny skies, windy and turning colder, high of just 42 degrees.
Coming up, Machinery Pete looks back into his history books for a look at some of the best deals on 8420s. Next.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
We love hitting the road and meeting so many of you. Well, Machinery Pete recently met up with someone who shared some interesting auction memories.
Well, it's happening more often, folks. I'll give a farm talk somewhere around the country, and then afterwards I will meet someone that I wrote or blogged about, or maybe a relative of theirs, years ago. Now, recently I was in Petersburg, Illinois, and after my talk, Joe Wood came up to visit. Here's a picture of Joe and myself. Now, back on December 28th, 2012, that was the farm estate auction for Joe's father, John Wood, right there in Petersburg, Illinois, sailed by my good friends at Sainert Auction Service. Now, December of 2012, that was right at the top of the absolute used equipment market used valuations, and this auction proved it. Now, on this sale was this 2002 John Deere 8420, 1,897 hours on it, sold for $147,500. So all these years later, that's still the second highest auction price ever on an 8420. And interestingly, the only one that's ever beat it came just 10 days before that, December 18th, 2012, on a farm auction in Independence, Iowa, where this 2003 model, 1,579 hours on it, went for $157. Now, also on John Wood's estate auction was this beautiful 2004 John Deere 8220. 2,268 hours on it, brought $126,000. Still today, fourth highest auction price ever on an 8220. And John's combine, wow. 2011, 9570 STS, 209 engine hours on it, sold for $203,000. Still today, second highest price ever on a 9570. So the importance here of timing.
Coming up, a young boy's jump for joy. It's about much more than a viral video. That's next in the country.
Is now the best time to sell your old equipment? Pete's Pick of the Week keeps you up to date on current market prices, making it easy for you to know when to sell your equipment for the best possible price. Text PETE6 to 31313 to get started.
Sometimes there are those video moments that are about so much more than shares and clicks, and this is one of them. It involves a little boy in a wheelchair. Wyatt Burgraff has spina bifida, but that doesn't keep him off the trampoline at a gym in Fargo, North Dakota. Just look at him. The gym offers programs for kids like Wyatt, And at one point, Wyatt indicates he wants to go even faster. The director of the gym says she hopes this video, which has been viewed millions of times, shows people the potential each child has in tearing down barriers. We couldn't agree more. A little bit of pure joy to start your week. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Started your week with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.